Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome to this very interesting panel discussion on innovative financing in for climate action. My name is Dominique Hyde. I'm the Director of External Relations at UNHCR. I imagine that it's not the first side event that you participate in, but I am told I'm supposed to repeat that if you want translation, there are little machines there that translate into French and Spanish. Thank you to all our translators. And I'm also told to ask you to leave them behind. Do not take them with you. So that's my logistics. With that, I'm very excited to invite to the panel and to the podium, my Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly Clemens.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be back in this room an hour after when I was last here. But more importantly, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this innovative financing for climate action event. Your presence and your support really mean a lot. And we have a hardworking team that has helped to put together this event, and more importantly, that has been working over now several years to really see how do we make financing work in this environment where we obviously have climate factors around us, and that includes with displacement. I think you have heard the statistic before, but in 2022, disasters, particularly climate-related disasters accounted for over half of new internal displacements, half. And how many individuals are, any guess? 32 million people. So this is not inconsequential. Climate change is exacerbating challenges for those that are already displaced, especially in fragile and conflict-affected areas. And shockingly, 70% of displaced people come from states highly vulnerable to climate change effects and displacement, and leads them to equally climate-vulnerable countries in areas where living are already precarious. I saw this firsthand in July. I had the honor and opportunity to go to Ethiopia, along the Ethiopia and Somalia border, where we have been engaged now for many years to help to support, protect, and aid, along with the Ethiopian government and lots of partners, a little over 200,000 Somalis. Meanwhile, there are now 725,000 Ethiopians in the same area, and we have a couple of 100,000 new Somalis coming for drought-related reasons. And so the impacts of all of this, we know, hinders inclusion and makes safe and sustainable solutions increasingly difficult, especially in climate areas. Despite generous support in 2022, particularly from the private sector and including to an organization like UNHCR. It was largely driven by the Ukraine situation, the Ukraine war. The rapid rise in humanitarian needs means we really need to think differently about how do we finance humanitarian action, but importantly, humanitarian financing related to climate action. To bridge this gap, we are looking at new mechanisms that will play a critical role in ensuring scarce funding is channeled most effectively to the frontline communities, and that's exceedingly important. That's where we want it to go, those hardest hit by climate change. We really do appreciate all of the support, including those here on the panel, who have partnered with us, with UNHCR, in developing new financing solutions for climate action. You'll hear about some of them today, but a few to just give you a quick synopsis. The Green Financing Facility. This is transitioning UNHCR infrastructure to renewable energy, very important. The second is Project Flow, which is funding solar-powered clean water infrastructure in various parts of the world. And the Refugee Environmental Protection Fund, which links reforestation and clean cooking programs to global carbon markets. These initiatives not only bring new funding in refugee contexts, but also create sustainable models with long-term benefits. And again, another theme from another event I was at earlier today, it really links the humanitarian and development pieces of our response structure together, and that's extraordinarily important and generates jobs, livelihoods, and fosters self-reliance. It shows the power of collaboration and innovation, but there's still very, very much to do. And we have just issued, in fact, just this week, our climate action strategy, which we encourage you all to take a look at. You'll find someplace, we don't have tables, but you'll find someplace a QR code which will give you access to this strategy. And if they are not available to you immediately, we'll ensure that they're available just after this meeting if you want to learn more. So we've embarked on an ambitious vision and agenda for 2030. We want people who flee from climate-fueled crises and those living on climate front lines to be protected, to be resilient to the impacts of climate change. We want to see them live self-sufficient lives despite the challenges that climate change brings. But we can't do this alone. Our pledge, working with humanitarian and development partners and the private sector and many of you, including governments represented, is to provide legal guidance on protection and climate change, to ensure displaced and stateless can access services that promote the sustainable use of natural resources, to increase resilience so that displaced people can prepare for, withstand, and importantly, recover from the impacts of climate change. And that, last but not least, UNHCR will continue to green our own operations and supply activities. And this is something that we're very proud of and can talk more about in the Q&A should you be interested. We think our extensive ground presence obviously put us in a good place to be able to respond to these challenges by working together and leveraging new models, financing models in particular. We can build a sustainable and resilient future for everyone impacted. So thank you for your support. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing now Nyakuma, who is the founder and director of Together South Sudan, and she has a few remarks that she'll come up here and deliver to you. Thank you.
Excellencies, head of states, representative of organizations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nyakuma Peter. I represent South Sudan as a refugee and almost to be a returnee, I would say, when peace is maintained in my country, and a global refugee forum, a representative also, and also precisely a founder and executive director of Together South Sudan, as it is said. That is a Center for Peace, Reconciliation, and Human Rights that is currently in South Sudan. I am an active human rights activist. I am honored to speak for refugees, internally displaced people, and returnees at this second GRF event. But even more, I am thrilled to represent my country, South Sudan. Being an IDP or a refugee or a returnee, I would say, is never a choice. Rather, it's a result of a situation in which political parties use violence in a state to resolve conflict that they have. And in that matter, it's forcing civilian population to seek refuge elsewhere due to that conflict. My passion had been bringing my communities together through peace-building initiatives and reconciliation. However, in the process, I have seen how climate change is a uniting factor that deserves a fight together in refugees, IDPs, and returnees, and host communities setting. During trainings, we jointly plant trees of reconciliation in each state to combat the climate change. Distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the world is concentrating its resources on the wars and conflict of warring nations. However, a war that unites us all is already going on, the climate war, which we must not hesitate to wage, since it will lead our descendants or offspring to extinct. I appreciate the South Sudan government in 2019 GRF promises and an additional ones announced at the GRF particularly with regard to tackling the early warning system and other environmental climate-related issues, and I call for the action to be made. As part of addressing the issues faced by refugees, internally displaced people, the host community, and other displaced population, I also call on the government, partners, and donors to prioritize climate action and make it a key component of development, peace, and life-saving humanitarian intervention. South Sudan, for instance, has been facing immense challenges of flooding since 2019. My state, Unity State, Bentiu, is one of the devastated state in my country. Upper Nile and Jonglei lives in horrible flooding. Thus, it is crucial to draw attention to the fact that a result of unfavorable weather, ongoing conflict, and a lack of sustainable peace and security, South Sudanese communities that are hosting refugees, internally displaced people, and returnees are still struggling to deal with the effect of flooding. Farmers are unable to cultivate in peace or find a way to sell little product they have. Communities are now much more vulnerable as a result of absence of private sector's growth, adaptation of modern techniques of agriculture, as financing for humanitarian relief is running out, and the few available initiatives for development are not able to serve a significant large population in my country. Lastly, climate change globally in South Sudan is more than just a press headline. For example, climate shock in South Sudan have an adverse effect on the life of people. For instance, food insecurity that leads to malnutrition, gender-based violence among women, is more likely to affect vulnerable groups such as youth, women, and children. Flood, heat wave, and landslide, and more disasters can cause harms or even death, particularly to women who do not have access to proper shelters and medical care, to refugees, returnees, and IDPs. Some of these effects are felt throughout the nation, most specifically Unity State, Bentiu, and Jonglei is still submerged in water since the past 3 years. Finally, in South Sudan, where farming is totally dependent on rainfall, variation in rainfall combined with droughts have negatively impacted the country productivity throughout the greater Upper Nile, Jonglei, and some other states of the country. In this case, help by contributing land, utilizing contemporary farming equipments are the ways to increase output, assist in establishment of irrigation system, and train the populace, especially the refugee returnees and hosting communities. It would be of great help to this group to maintain the way of life and contribute to economic growth. In order to resist the shock of climate change and its effect, South Sudan needs creative solutions and technological assistance. Therefore, most rural communities would benefit tremendously from increased financial assistance and utilizing the Refugee Environmental Protection Fund. That would help address these complex issues by creating an innovative and sustainable financing mechanism to invest in strengthening and scaling up reforestation and clean cooking programs in climate vulnerable refugees hosting communities in South Sudan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Nyakuma. Thank you for that. I think I really liked what you said, that climate change is in South Sudan is much more than a press headline. And you explained very well the adverse impacts that climate change is having on women and girls, but even beyond on the entire population. So thank you for that, and thank you for introducing that. Before I go on, I see colleagues at the back. Maybe they're just standing waiting for somebody, but if not, please, there's seats. Please come and sit at the front. I'm trying to embarrass all of you and come to the front if you can. But ladies and gentlemen, I have a fantastically distinguished panel to my right. But before I introduce every one of you and we start the discussion, I wanted to just explain a bit a few things. And why are we here, and why is innovative financing so critical to UNHCR's work? It has allowed us to really look at I guess, develop non-traditional financing models for the organization. And these mechanisms has really transformed the way we think in UNHCR and how we work. And I have to tell you, it hasn't been easy. It's actually been a learning process for us within the organization, but I feel as if we've really advanced. And probably if we'd been at the GRF 4 years ago, we would not have been in a position of actually having this panel today. And what we've been looking at is really at enabling longer term solutions and the transition to self-reliance, which is very much at the center of the Global Compact on Refugees. So these mechanisms are trying to make UNHCR more efficient as an organization, but more importantly, it's also to channel new and more sustainable and longer term resources to support the people that we're trying to serve, the people that have been forced to flee. And they bring together a variety of different actors. They bring together governments, whether donors or hosts. They bring together development actors and the private sector, and to build really longer term lasting solutions for communities. So I'm going to outline just two of our innovative financing efforts. One is Project Flow, and the second one is the Refugee Environmental Program. So Project Flow uses a revolving fund to support the financing of the clean energy transition for clean water infrastructure in displacement settings. And this new mechanism helps us and helps reduce CO2 emissions. But it also makes sense because what we're doing is that the infrastructure this infrastructure is much more financially efficient. It also releases funds that can then be redeployed to serve other urgent needs. The other initiative I mentioned is the Refugee Environmental Program, and we call it in HCR REP Fund because we like acronyms. This flagship initiative holds the potential to, I'd like to think it holds the potential to fundamentally transform UNHCR and other partners to address climate programming in displacement settings. The REP Fund is what we're trying to do is really aim to link large-scale reforestation and clean cooking energy programs in displaced communities to the global carbon markets, using carbon financing to strengthen and scale up these programs. And hopefully this will help restore the environment, reduce the carbon footprint of these communities, reduce the risk of gender-based violence for women and girls, as we just heard, who source firewood and in forests, and improve health outcomes through reducing the use of firewood as a cooking fuel. And hopefully it will also create livelihood opportunities for displaced populations. Before we start with the panel, we're going to show a short video, and then we'll start with the hearing from our great panelist. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you liked the video. I'd now like to turn to my distinguished panelists. And let me start with you, Excellency Minister Atim. Displaced populations are often highly exposed and vulnerable to climate-related shocks and environmental degradation. And Uganda is one amongst many countries most vulnerable to the impact of climate change, as well as many people here in the room know, a major host to refugees. What climate and environmental risks do displaced communities and their host face? And what has the Ugandan government done to rebuild or build their resilience?
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, heads of institutions, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be here this afternoon. The question posed, yes, as a country, my country, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, and I bring you greetings. We are hosting over 1.5 million refugees in my country, and this has actually placed an overwhelming demands on the limited capacities and resources that we have and the communities where the refugees stay. The rate of degradation in Uganda is estimated to be at 4% per annum, and that is alarming. The impact of environment degradation has a wide implications to our economy, and this has actually also reduced on the groundwater recharge and supply, which in turn increases the climate vulnerability of the communities. Flooding, landslides are normal occurrences, and they pose a big risk to the lives and shelter, as well as food security. Women and children are at the more increased risk of gender-based violence, as they are forced to travel even longer distance to collect firewood and to look for water sources in case the nearby has dwindled. In Uganda, refugees are often settled in environmentally sensitive areas and marginalized land that often is near our central forest reserves. Mostly those are a bit of the open space we have. Increased environmental degradation in Uganda will exacerbate the tension, protection risk, psychoeconomic vulnerability, and compromise the basic shelters needed for our refugees. To mitigate this effect negatively on both the environment and the people, we need to act really very fast and decisively. We have seen some positive results, and that is why measures to restore degraded forests and probably the wetlands are very crucial and urgent. Efforts to restore degraded areas like forests through tree growing and allowing the natural forest to regenerate has resulted positively in an increase in around the natural resources, the cover around the central forest reserves of about 12,000 hectares, and this is positive. Within the refugee hosting landscape, the UNHCR in Uganda has partnered with my ministry under the National Forest Authority to restore about 1,200 hectares of central forest reserves around the settlements. And this one we greatly appreciate. This is an area almost the size of Geneva, if you could just factor in 1,200 hectares. And within the total acres of woodlots, it's important also that we had to look at the woodlots, because those are the ones which provides firewood. And this has been established within the refugee settlements and the surrounding host communities since 2019. We have been continually trying to plant this as an alternative or availability of firewood to the refugees and the surrounding communities. These are very important and effective initiatives we have taken as a country. However, even with the various interventions as mentioned above, the restoration and promotion of alternative fuels for the cooking, they're not matching the rate of degradation. There's still a big gap. We have not really matched the pace at the rate where our forest cover is being degraded under the growing demand of natural resources, which are used for various reasons, including shelter. The expansion of commercial and subsistence agriculture is another angle which is encroaching on our conservation areas. The demand for grazing area, the increase in population, those are drivers that makes it difficult to protect our conservation. To rise up to the aim of enhancing the resilience of both displaced communities, we need more international support. It's a big challenge. Uganda has fulfilled its obligations as a refugee hosting country with an open policy, open door policy, which is not found elsewhere. And we have made our commitments. We have demonstrated with our pledges as read by Her Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, that we are willing even to do more, because that is what we have taken on for our brothers and sisters in need. Equally, the international community will request that they also meet their obligations. We should be together in this. Today it might be seen that they're knocking the door at Ugandans' borders. If we don't do anything about it, they will look somewhere to survive, and it can be at your door. And not very many people are welcoming for various reasons. So let's help it from the source. Finally, I think the refugees themselves must be meaningfully engaged to find solutions. For us in our country, you find others have even stayed 20 years or even plus of the refugees. Others have requested to go back when their original countries are safe, but they find it hospitable to be in Uganda. And with our open policy, we don't push them away. And this should be really appreciated by supporting my country. We have inclusively preparations for of our co-convenership to this forum. There's a pledge by the refugee representatives from Uganda to plant 7.5 million trees around households and woodlots by the year 2027. we look forward realizing this. This shows that we are all together in this. And when we honor this, it eases the journey. We think government and partners, as well as refugees and the host community, are engaged in activities to protect the environment and to build resilience. It is important that we work together, friends, to support the capacity development of the refugee-led organizations, to support them in increasing funding opportunities and address any obstacle that they may face. Is another arm that will ease the challenges and the pressure. I look towards us working toward encountering this challenge together. For God and my country, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister Atim. You know, as you were speaking, I was reminded you can flee conflict, you can flee war, but you can't flee climate change. And I think what you're trying to do, and the initiative also by the refugee population, but also your generous government, even though there's a huge impact on the economy, on women and girls, as we heard, you're doing your utmost, and it should be highly recognized. Thank you. I'd now like to turn to our next panelist and to Mr. Hildebrand, if that's okay. So as the mayor of the Nyamagabe district, I'm sorry if I'm not saying that properly, in Rwanda, I understand that you've been seeing the direct effects of climate change on the displaced communities, as well as in your area on the ground, including around the refugee camp. There's a refugee camp in his district called Kigeme, and it hosts more than 14,000 refugees from Congo. What are the main climate challenges facing your district, and what are you doing about it?
Thank you. Displaced communities confront diverse climate and environmental risks that jeopardize basic services. Water supply systems are disrupted due to heavy runoff and overflows. At times, electricity lines are damaged, resulting in blackouts in the affected communities. Food systems are also adversely impacted. In fact, in my district, displaced individuals engage in agricultural activities, and those with farms in marshlands are particularly vulnerable to flooding, affecting the food production, as Ms. Nyakuma was saying at the moment. And this is to a similar extent as those in hill areas which are experiencing drought. Then the situation worsens when their shelters are affected. Landslides trigger a double displacement, which intensifies the shock due to the inherent vulnerability of displaced people. And lastly, climate-related deforestation exacerbates the energy issue, specifically regarding cooking energy. Now, what are we doing? There are a number of interventions we are doing in my district. One, governments and the cities should view displaced communities as pivotal contributors to development rather than a burden. That's what we did first. We consider them as contributors to our development. So this implies considering various aspects in their planning to foster a seamless integration with our host communities. And this was deliberated upon during the recently concluded Commonwealth Local Government Conference 2023 in Kigali, and is being regarded as an input for the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting next year. In order to support the inclusion of displaced communities in our cities and districts, local government need easy access to green financing. We had the chance of working with the Mayor's Migration Council and with UNHCR, and I will be speaking about this in the next few seconds. But we have other green financing approaches in Rwanda, where my district is. In fact, a growing population means growing energy needs to provide basic services and ensure everyone is food secure. With the rising issue of deforestation compromising carbon sequestration and further contributing to unstable soils and landslides, it's crucial to explore and adopt alternative energy technologies beyond solid fuels, like wood. Now, through the Mayor's Migration Council, Global Cities Fund for Migrant and Refugees, and in partnership with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, Nyamagabe District has introduced resource recycling to minimize the waste in landfills and contribute to the production of renewable energy at a district scale. We are training households in Kigeme refugee camps, as well as in the host communities, to sort organic and inorganic waste so that organic waste can be used for the production of biomass briquettes. This is helping to educate all residents on climate change mitigation strategies while reducing deforestation and improving access to more sustainable and efficient energy sources. In tandem, Nyamagabe District GCF project is also supporting the green transition by providing jobs to refugees and host community members to place landslide-prone hillsides into viable agricultural areas. Yet, to facilitate the rollout and adoption of these technologies, funding and financing needs to be available at the local level, especially given the high initial investment involved. Direct investment can help build the local capacities to not only support programming around renewable energy and nature-based solutions, but also help ensure climate-forward policies are put in place. And I think this will be the next focus of this generation if we need to address this issue. I thank you all.
Thank you, Hilbrand, for sharing with us the challenges and the multiple shocks that are being faced in your district, as well as some of the solutions that you've outlined. I'd like to come back to you, Honourable Minister, if that's okay. At the initial steps, you really outlined well for us some of the mitigation and adaptation strides that Uganda has taken in terms of reforestation that you mentioned and provision of cooking fuel to refugees, for example, and the host communities. So we've been working together on these issues, but what I'd like to hear from you is how can the Refugee Environmental Protection Fund carbon financing model actually support Uganda, or at least complement and boost the efforts that you're already putting in place? Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity once more. Hopefully I'm heard. I think we have made big strides, indeed, as noted. As a Minister of Environment, we have been really very keen on this, and it's a global problem. The environmental protection and access to sustainable energy for cooking remains really underfunded almost across the board, even when I was hearing my brother from Rwanda. It's a big challenges for our refugees and even all Ugandans, because you find that almost everybody uses either firewood or charcoal, which is now not so friendly to our environment. The whole rural population, they're using the charcoal and the firewood. But this is not a sustainable source of energy to the household and even institutions, all alike. Almost all the refugees and the members of the host community use firewood, as I've said, for cooking, and has actually become a big driver for deforestation, because every existing tree is like at risk of being cut. As a country, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda, under executive order, has stopped using charcoal, northern part of Uganda, eastern, western, where our refugees are even based. So we have executive order number 3, which we are implementing to save the environment, but with the challenges of high demand for woodlots. Here is where there's urgency to our partners, to our funders, that we need to invest in alternative sources of energy. If we don't, then you can see it's like we are playing games with ourselves. They need to survive. In addition, the lack of access to sustainable cooking alternative leads to social protection issues. It becomes a source of conflict because the resources are limited and the demands are so high. And this can even go as far as affecting the nutritional and emission-related health impacts. These are the side effect of using not clean energy. And who are the most people who are affected? It is our women and the girl carrying firewood, even the use of the firewood with the smoke on their health, and is a very common occurrences. The gender-based violence, you have gone to look for firewood or fire or water for a long time, the poor woman has to be, I don't want to use the word, but it just rings in your mind. What will happen with the ladies here? You know what happens. So is nasty. We also observe the tension between communities over the natural resources. That is both the refugees and the host communities fighting over the limited sources of fuel. Refugees adapt negatively most often. The coping mechanism sometimes is that to exchange food for cooking fuel. And the skills means that the food insecurity occurs. The little food for refugees, if they don't have the charcoal, the fuel to cook, half of it is exchanged and they remain starving, and vice versa with the host communities. It's a very serious issue. It is important also to note, friends, that the issues of energy access for refugee population in Uganda mirror those of Ugandan host communities. As we know that ours is all inclusive. Whatever we do with our refugees, being education, health, what we all share. So what you are seeing in the refugee communities is what is happening with the population around and the whole of our country. I think let us not create some sort of separate or parallel solutions to this community, because for us, our policy is that we live in harmony with them. They are all inclusive in what we undertake. Now, the interventions, if it's parallel, it will cause even conflict and discomfort, which we don't need to rock the boat. As I have mentioned earlier, the government of Uganda, together with its partners, is actively working on solutions and initiatives to counter the challenges. We have been working, for example, with the UNHCR on a forestation project, the terms of funding on larger scales. I've been warned, so I don't know whether I should proceed. Really, I need to respect time. I don't know whether I can.
Well, I think maybe, yeah, if you
I
could
wrap
try
up?
to wrap up.
With your permission.
Of course, it's, keep going.
Thank you. The RIP funds focuses on providing sustainable and scaled-up funding for restoration and clean cooking programs through its carbon financing model, and would help provide long-term resource commitment and technical capacity necessary to address those needs, with boosting key effects already being mentioned. The REP funds will provide critical financing towards the following. One, the community engagement and education, how we are going to carry out the awareness campaigns, the workshops to educate our communities, including the refugees, and on the importance of planting trees, and then sustainable cooking alternatives. It will also emphasize the environmental and health benefits of the use of efficient cook stoves. This is also critical, which is positive. It will also help us providing training programs for the community members, including the refugees, technical training on production, maintenance, and use of energy-efficient stoves, empowerment of local entrepreneurs, as I said, who take up the lead in expanding this intervention. It will also help us to monitor robust monitoring and evaluation of the system that we are trying to put in place, and it will fast-track the results, especially the progress on tree nurseries, cooking stove distribution. We need also data collection to help us plan ahead, and this also is will help us on reducing the emission and improving the indoor air quality. Research is also critical because we are swimming into the world almost of unknown. New technologies come. We need also to facilitate that to keep us abreast. I've appreciated your time. I wish to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And I think we learned a lot through your experience. I think we have a lot to learn from Uganda. But as the Honorable Minister said, there's still so much for all of us to learn. But one thing is clear is that there's no point in creating parallel systems. It needs to be one joined up position. So next, Deputy Minister Kravik from the Government of Norway. Welcome. Thanks to you and thanks to your government, you have spurred the development of the REP Fund through your Innovation Norway support. So how do you see the role of innovation in addressing and finding new solutions to some of the large and complex challenges we are encountering in our displacement settings?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you to my co-panelists for some very insightful and interesting interventions. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I know we're short on the clock, but just to say, I've been attending a few panel discussions now, so just some preliminary takeaways that I think I will be trying to communicate back to Oslo. One is that we have a massive problem in terms of the number of refugees that we're seeing, and it's impacting a whole host of countries, and Uganda has spoken very eloquently about this, and other countries are feeling, I think, the same impacts, and that's something that is a collective responsibility and something that we need to grapple with. Number two, when it comes to the drivers of these refugee flows, climate has been mentioned, but I think armed conflict is also something that is vital for us to take into account. As we've said now repeatedly in various panels, 2022 was the deadliest year on record since 1984, and there's a clear correlation between the number of people being killed and injured in conflict and refugees. And that's something that we need to address. And I think prevention of armed conflict is really key. And ensuring that we spend our resources and our political capital on preventing conflict, not just managing conflicts, are vital. And another issue, or another takeaway rather, that I will be communicating back to my partners in Oslo is that there is a funding gap now. For obvious reasons. So what is required of us now is that we need to be more creative in our funding, and we need to be we need to be smarter in the way that we raise funding and the way we spend our finances. And we need, in order to achieve that, I think we need more public-private partnerships, and we need to be environmentally sustainable in our approaches. And that's where I think the REP, that's the terminology, right? So the REP fund, that's where it comes in, because I think it ticks all of those boxes. It's and you described the fund really well. It's a fund that invests in reforestation, in clean cooking, and it has that component of environmental sustainability in terms of the refugee generated carbon credits, which is really unique and really interesting, and something that provides that additional component, which is fascinating and something that we are very proud to support. And I think initially we supported this in 2021 through what is called a innovation lab grant, a small grant, but a grant that was meant to be catalytic in order to spur more investment. And I think that our collective willingness to try to advance that program has turned out to be very successful. It is now a flagship project and something that we're very proud to be associated with. And it ticks the boxes that we've talked about. It's innovative, it's climate friendly, and it has also a public-private component. But I still think that there are challenges that we need to be mindful of going forward. One, there's a lack of inclusion of local communities. That's something that we see across the board and something that needs to be addressed. Two, we see too much short-term financing. There needs to be, again, long-term financing, and there needs to be preventive financing. In other words, looking at issues before they come to a head, so to speak. And there's just too little public-private collaboration, and that's also something that needs our attention. And we've tried to respond to that in terms of how we have structured our responses. So we have established now a humanitarian innovation program, which is administered by Innovation Norway. And through that program, we have been able to support various initiatives. We have supported initiatives that seek to ensure that also displaced communities can receive legal assistance through digital platforms, that we can establish digital platforms that allow for communication between displaced people and their host governments and host countries. And we've also, and here I come back to my learned colleague from Uganda, we've also been able to support some of the programs that Uganda has has very generously initiated in their own jurisdiction. And I just want to take this opportunity to extend my government's appreciation and gratefulness to Uganda for all the work that they're doing in terms of not only receiving refugees, but also treating them with generosity and with innovation in terms of giving them ownership and giving them an opportunity to thrive in a very difficult context. And that's something that we're very proud to be associated with. So I think lots of more work is required, but I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of we see now very robust and solid programs on the global scale. Through the REP program, we see also individual countries now really stepping up. We see more collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. And we just need to continue this going forward, and that will require our full attention and our collective will to try to be more creative in our approaches. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister Kravik. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of public and private partnerships together, as well as the importance of local community. I think that's something that I hope is reminded across these 3 days in the GRF, but also not just here, actually in all of our efforts. I'd now like to turn to the wonderful State Secretary for Development Policy of Denmark, Ms. Lotte Machon. We are so fortunate and grateful that the government of Denmark has been a key partner in both projects, both the REP Fund as well as Project Flow. And given the fact that you've been such a great partner, but beyond, can you maybe speak to everybody in this room on why is innovative financing important or key to your government, and how does it impact in humanitarian context specifically? Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Dominique, and thank you all for being here, and especially also thanks to Representative for Rwanda and Uganda and South Sudan. This is really what it's all about. That's the challenge that you are bearing in your countries. And I really hope that this is not only an event, but more a call out, a shout out for us to scale up all of our efforts collectively to address the challenges that we all know is increasing in scale, as my Norwegian colleague just said. And I think this is why Denmark is engaged, that the humanitarian response has become stretched by numbers, by scale, length, and severity. And we do see how the forced displacements is, yes, it's a global challenge, but it's impacting quite a limited number of countries much more heavily than the rest of us. And the three of them are represented here today. And they're really bearing a heavy burden. And the risks and the emergencies are accelerated by the climate change, the war that we should be united in fighting, as the South Sudanese representative said. But it's also so that the displacement crisis risk increasing the climate vulnerabilities, as the Minister of Uganda said, and we are happy to work both with Uganda and Rwanda on actually addressing these issues. So therefore, for us, working with innovative financing as the Project Flow and the REP Fund, they're necessary. We cannot do without them, and that's why we have been putting in ODA money, the sort of grant money, in terms of trying to leverage more private funding, more innovative funding, and really to get at a bigger scale, better impact, better efficiency to actually help the people on the ground. So, and I think, again, what the funds are doing, they're widening the donor base, as we so urgently need in order to tackle the program. And then I also hope that we can all sort of cut across the many side events that we are participating in, because, I mean, localized approaches is in one side event, and private sector involvement and social inclusion, and it all ties together and really should sort of be the base for doing what we address here, getting into innovative financing. So we've been really pleased to be part of the REP Fund and the Project Flow, sort of been financing from the very beginning and continuing to do so. The REP with 3.6 million USD for 23 to 25, and I hope many more will join as we move forward. And that's just a few of the things that we are doing in terms of innovative financing. We're also working with green guarantees, looking across other sectors like health and education. And it's only by leveraging and scaling up such innovative financing mechanisms that we can help address the imminent humanitarian crisis that we are faced with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lotte. I like that. I liked what you said at the beginning. This is not an event, but it's a call out, and I think that's what I think is very central, and also how all of these different call outs that are taking place here are linked up together, and how the different pledges also come together. So now I'd like to turn to Mr. Skipsted. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
You are, yeah.
Yes? Okay. So we've heard both from our Danish and Norwegian colleagues about the importance not just of innovation, but of the links between public and private partnership. So now if we can focus a bit on Project Flow and your extensive experience in the private sector coming from the Grundfos Group, one of the largest water pump manufacturers in the world, and now executive director at the Grundfos Foundation, which is a front runner in the climate space in really advocating for humanitarian solutions and action. I feel as if I'm a Grundfos advocate myself saying all of this.
Thank you so much.
From your perspective, what role can the private sector play in contributing to innovative financing initiatives like the Project Flow, and how can we scale these to impact in humanitarian settings?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this, and thank you for my distinguished panelist. This is a new forum for a guy like me from the corporate foundation world and the private sector, but I'm, to be honest, very inspired by what I've heard since I came here yesterday, and also for just sitting here in the panel today. The reason why we are involved in the Project Flow is, first of all, because UNHCR reached out and said they had a great idea, and I applauded that because it is really a great idea. Because the Grundfos Foundation has been active ever since we were founded back in the 70s, but the Grundfos Group was founded back during the Second World War in order to provide water to farmers in Denmark, and then became a global company providing water for the world. And the idea is, of course, to promote the technologies, the competences, and the products that we make. But during that journey in our history, we also came across that there are areas in the world where we can provide technologies and ideas and know-how that can assist and help a lot of people to gain access to clean water. This is one of the major milestones in our corporation and our foundation, is that we strongly believe that every human being should have access to clean and safe water. That's why the foundation is very active in this. And I've seen it myself in going to remote villages, refugee settlements, and seeing what water can do. We know that already. We just pour it into our glasses to go to the tap. That's not how it works everywhere. And I've seen what it can do to a family in a small African village. I have seen what it can do to the atmosphere in a refugee camp, where suddenly you don't have to get up at night to make sure to get clean water, or you do not have to, crawl or fight against your fellow human beings to get water. But if you have water running, then there's the fundament or the platform to create peace, prosperity, education, health, etc. So that's where we come into the picture. And just seeing water being pumped up in remote areas in a refugee camp, where we saw what we were doing together with our NGO partners, convinced us that if we can scale this to other parts of the world, not necessarily using our Grundfos pumps, that'll be good, but you don't have to. But the idea of making sure there's safe and accessible water for all, then suddenly everything could be turned around in that community. And then when UNHCR reached out and said, we have an idea, how can we fund this and scale this within the Project Flow, we thought that it was exactly what we were thinking in our foundation, based on our experiences and also what our colleagues in the business are working with, and also what we could contribute with. So that's why we are co-funding the Project Flow in order to transform not only UNHCR, because you were mentioning it yourselves, to become more green in your operations. That would be fantastic, and we would like to support that. But also show the world that it can be done, because if you use solar as the prime energy source for water supply in various parts of the world, then we can get rid of diesel generators, and we get rid of trucking of water. And if you know, and you know that in UNHCR, and I'm pretty sure most people in this room know how costly water is in refugee settlements, then we could potentially save a lot of money and then reinvest the money in the next refugee settlement. And that's the idea behind the project Flow. And we love that because it's scalable. We would like to be on that journey together with UNHCR, supported by the Danish and also the German government, and show the world that it can be done. We have the technologies, we have the good intentions, and fortunately enough, a foundation like the one I represent and other foundations have the funding. So if we can solve the water issues in some of the most remote areas, and especially make sure that there's access to clean drinking water to some of the most vulnerable, often forgotten people in the world, what can we then achieve in the rest of the world? So that's why we are very proud to be a part of this, and would like to be part of. This is the first wave of the Project Flow. We are already talking about the second wave, and we are already promoting this with other corporate foundations outside of Denmark and Europe, Asia, United States, etc. And they are, to be honest, the ones I'm talking to thinks this is the right way to do it. So let's get on with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Skibset. I liked what you said. You said water is central to peace and prosperity, and it's becoming more and more so. I actually, as you were speaking, I was remembering when we started to discuss this. You weren't in your current role, and we were having a meeting with your colleagues up in our offices. And I remember when Grundfos colleagues left, and Danish colleagues as well left the room. I remember our colleagues saying, "Oh, this will never happen. This is way too complicated." So actually, reflecting on that, it looked impossible, and now we're here today. So impossible is possible. But in order to make things possible, especially if you're working with the UN, we're trying to be less bureaucratic and more efficient. But we have a lot of legal hoops to jump over, especially when it comes to innovative financing. But as we start working on some of these innovative financing tools, we're finding the legal ways forward. And who better to partner with than DLA Piper, one of the largest law firms in the world. So welcome, Jose Maria, who is a good friend to UNHCR and has been providing such important support in terms of legal advice, at least including legal advice to UNHCR, and that goes way beyond the REP fund, but also including that. So as we've discussed, innovative financing models often have new and novel ways of working, of which the organizations are not always comfortable with. And that's why we require private sector expertise and solutions. So, Jose Maria, based on your experience and with what you've heard today from other speakers, what role can the private sector play in supporting innovative financing in refugee settings, and how does it work along with DLA Piper? Thanks.
Thanks, Dominique, for your kind and undeserved words. I would say one of the beauties, someone said this morning, of being the last one to speak is that everything has already been said, so you don't need to get much into details. I mean, the private sector can play many different roles in supporting initiatives that tackle climate change. We can obviously provide financing, that's easy, but also we can provide a different mindset, flexibility, innovation, or expertise in areas that are not that well known for governments or large organizations. But why should businesses bother? Well, there are many reasons, but let me just refer to 3 of them. First, because it is the right thing to do. I mean, climate change is not an idea with which to entertain intelligent or not that intelligent discussions with your friends. It is a reality that only last year forced 32 million people to flee the homes because of fires, hurricanes, droughts, or the floods that were mentioned earlier. There are estimations that that say that in worst case scenario, we can see 1.2 billion people being displaced by 2050 as a consequence of natural disasters. And businesses should help to address the root causes and the impacts of climate change to reduce the number of these climate refugees or migrants. Not doing so and leaving the sacrifices to others is selfish, and selfish institutions end up being irrelevant. The second reason is because it is a smart thing to do from a business perspective. Whether we like it or not, climate change is going to have a major impact on all businesses. It causes massive displacements from the countryside to large cities, from some countries to others, and this will affect where businesses can establish operations and will create welfare, human rights, healthcare, and equality challenges that businesses will inevitably have to confront. So best to start thinking about them today, because if we wait, it will be a bit too late. And while it is true that some regions like Asia-Pac, Africa, or LATAM will be affected more and earlier than others, the knock-on effect will be global. I mean, living in the north is not going to save us from what is going to happen if we do nothing. And the same can be said for sectors. I mean, agriculture, transport, energy, and construction will likely be the first to feel the impacts. But our economies and supply chains are now so interconnected, and we saw in COVID that all sectors will be affected as well. We need to take these into account in our future planning and when reviewing our risk prevention policies. And the final reason is the scale of the challenge. Governments and individuals cannot address this alone. We all need to contribute. The key word here, as you've heard several times already, only in this same session, is together. I mean, together we can overcome some of these problems. If we are not together, well, it will be impossible, probably. So how do we try to help and cooperate with UNHCR? Well, to start with, we are already a partner of the REP Fund that has been mentioned many times. Forced displacement has been a key focus of our pro bono practice since we started working with UNHCR more than 12 years ago. In all these years, we've provided pro bono legal support worth north $7 million. And finally, as you know, people displaced by climate do not always qualify for international protection. If there's no conflict, there is no protection, as unfair as that may sound. As a law firm, we work on raising awareness on this lack of legal frameworks protecting some climate displaced people, and also together with UNHCR in developing a global governance framework on climate displacement, including highlighting emerging international and regional agreements, regional and national decisions, and bilateral agreements to tackle this issue. We are also mapping strategies that some climate-affected countries are adopting to support planned migration options, including through the development of labor, education, and family migration pathways. I think the goal is to share knowledge and to spark action so that we can be on the front foot.
Well, Jose Maria, you spurred a lot of interest here by the Honorable Minister. She liked some of the points and is noting fervently on her piece of paper. So as usual, DLA Piper is always spot on in terms of advice. You heard him, climate change will affect all businesses, and it already is. And the scale of the challenges and the needs need us to work collectively together if we need to move forward. I'd like to come back to you, Deputy Foreign Minister Kravich, if that's okay. And you've been supporting the REP Fund and innovative financing to help further Norway's commitment to climate action. Let me rephrase it. How does supporting the REP Fund's innovative financing help further Norway's commitment to climate action? I think you answered it somewhat first, but maybe if you could come back to some of those points. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief, and I think I touched on it in my previous intervention, but just again to say that for us going forward, it's incumbent on us to be innovative, to take risks, and to find new partnerships when we establish and advance our development programs. And what we need to do is we need to establish an infrastructure both domestically but also internationally that allows for that. Domestically, as I indicated, we have now sort of established this humanitarian initiative which seeks to galvanize our ability to liaise with the private sector and also to be more environmentally friendly and to be more innovative in our funding. And that's where I talked about all the programs pertaining to digitization, when it comes to supporting some of the very sophisticated programs in Uganda and so forth. So that's what we're doing domestically. Internationally, we're trying to find partners that have the same approach when it comes to around their thinking. And here, that's essentially why we decided to support the REP Fund, essentially because it takes that approach. You know, it's innovative, it's sophisticated, it looks at new partnerships, it's environmentally friendly. And that's also something that we're trying to advance in other contexts. And then I think we need to take a step back and acknowledge that we have to, in order to be effective, we have to collaborate. We have to collaborate at the global level. So for us, you know, two core aspects of our foreign policy is try to be very clear-eyed about the importance of multilateralism, that, you know, we need to have robust conversations within the current parameters, within the UN, within the WTO, within the WHO, and so forth. So that institutional framework needs to be consolidated and sustained. And also we need to ensure that there's respect for international law. That's something that we have been discussing in the context, of course, now Gaza, but also Ukraine, armed conflict, but also in terms of how refugees are treated, how our youth are treated. So international law needs to be our yardstick. And that's a commitment that that needs to guide us when it comes to our global approaches, but also our local approaches. And one of the things that we are very adamant in doing is to find partners, local partners, that can be effective in providing us with information and providing us with input in terms of how we should formulate effective policies. So we have lots of good partners now, also in Uganda and in other countries in Africa, but in Latin America and Europe, where we liaise on a consistent basis with various marginalized communities, with victims, with women, with youth, with other types of communities that very often aren't sufficiently heard. And I think in order to be effective, in order to be innovative, in order to be sophisticated, we need to reach out to those communities. And that's now a central aspect of our humanitarian approaches and also our more overarching foreign policy approaches. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Foreign Minister. I'd like to ask a final question to State Secretary Macron, who I pronounced Machon at the beginning, because my mother tongue is French, but Macron, I hear, is the right pronunciation. Sorry, Lotte. But so maybe if I can ask you one final question, which is very similar to the previous question I just asked. How does Project Flow and in general public-private financing help enhance Denmark's commitment to climate action?
Thank you so much. It actually does sound better in French, so let's stick to that. So I just very brief. So the Danish government does have a super ambitious approach to climate policy. We have set a target of 35% in 2024. We'll have to go to green activities within our development aid. But it's also clear to us that donors and grant money cannot do anything alone. I mean, we cannot deliver on the SDGs, we cannot deliver on the COP agreement if we only look at grant money. We need to have the private sector along with us. And here the Danish private sector are really key important partners to us, as are some out in globally. But and I have to say, it's not only about financial resources. It's also very much, and I think this is what Mr. Skibsted said so very clearly. This is also about knowledge, and sort of the whole data that is coming with through some of the private companies, and together we can then get at scale and impact and efficiency. So, and I think in a Danish context, the private sector has a strong tradition of being involved in societal challenges. Again, I think it came out before very clear. So it's been natural for us to do that, to come out very strongly in public-private partnerships and do a heavy lift together on, for example, climate change. And so both we as the government of Denmark and Grundfos, as you've heard, came together in the project flow, and also the REP fund from our side, which we will continue in doing. So and I mean, just one final remark. I mean, when we put in an ODA grant in some of these new financing or innovative financing sources, we can make 1 kroner become into 3 or 5 kroners. And this is simply what we need to get at if we are to tackle the climate challenge of today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lotte. I would like, we have a few minutes just for an intervention from the floor, and I understand that we have an intervention from a European Parliament. Janina, I'll let you introduce yourself, 2 or 3 minutes for the intervention. Thank you.
Perhaps I will
turn around.
I would like you to see me also. I see that the inclusion of we have not only the problems with inclusion of refugees, but also with the disabled people or people with disability. Yes, but in the European Parliament we have also a lot of to do. So we are supposed to talk about innovative financing in climate action. But why do we need such innovations? So let me tell you. So because our wealthy economies have caused a lot of damage and losses in the poorest societies of third world countries, I believe this obliged the European Union and its member states to bring a fair share in the funding that will cover these losses. The Commission emphasizes the need to achieve the annual climate finance target of 100 billion USD in 2023 and the necessity to exceed this amount in working towards the goal beyond 2025 in order to respond to the scale of loss and damage. But would it be enough? The far-reaching effects of climate change on migrants, displaced people and their host communities cannot be forgotten. Climate-related migration and displacement is already taking place, which is confirmed by the huge number of over 23 million people displaced within countries as a result of sudden events such as floods, storms. That is almost half of population of my country, Poland. I want to be clear. If we want to reduce migration towards Europe, we should increase the resources to prevent displacement and migration of those who lack access to water, those who suffer from natural disasters, or those who escape from rising sea level. Let's tackle the root causes of migration and help these communities stay in their country of origin. This won't eliminate the migration problem, as it will always exist, but it can significantly reduce it. By how much? Well, as much as we decide to reduce the scale of damage and loss. This highlights the urgent need for proactive policies that address multiple interlinked issues: climate change, displacement, and development. Ensuring the protection and well-being of affected populations while promoting sustainable solutions to both humanitarian and environmental challenges is crucial here. With coordinated efforts and strong policy coherence for development, we can work to mitigate the negative impacts of climate change on vulnerable communities and increase resilience to environmental shocks. To strategic collaboration between governments, financial institutions, and the private sector, we can catalyze the transition to a more resilient and carbon neutral future, ensuring that climate action is not only a moral imperative, but also an economically viable path to a more sustainable world for future generations. Thank you. And I had to present myself at the beginning, but I forgot. My name is Janina Ochojska. I am actually a member of European Parliament in EPP group, but my roots came from humanitarian 30 years ago. I created Polish Humanitarian Action, and we are dealing with water, about 1,000 boreholes in South Sudan, and the other projects. So I hope that we have here the common subjects to raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Janina, and I think that's an openness to work more in collaboration. We've come to the end of this fabulous panel. Thank you so much to all of the great panelists, participants, delegates, and for everybody for your valuable contribution to this event. You heard it, the magnitude of the challenge is staggering. It's urgent that we work together on new financing solutions for climate action in refugee hosting countries. We've learned a lot today. We've learned on innovative financing mechanisms and how they play such an important role in developing new sources of funding to support those most in need and to ensure that existing funding is channeled much more effectively. We heard it also from our panelists, the importance of collaboration and innovation in tackling some of these very complex challenges and learning as well. However, there's much more that needs to be done, and we must really accelerate and support all these types of engagements by joining forces and harnessing our potential of new financing models. Thank you so much to everybody, and have a great rest of the day.